Hello. Today we are going to be looking at Job 3. We're starting to get into the speeches. What I am going to attempt to do, I can't promise it'll happen every time, is go through a person's speech. At the beginning, some of these speeches take several chapters. We'll see how the timing goes. If it's a one-chapter one, we're going to go through one. If not, we'll go through more. So remember, at this point, Job and his friends are sitting together in silence. It's been 7 days, 7 nights of silence. No matter what these guys say afterwards, they are sitting with him. That takes a special kind of friend. And again, there seemed to be a thing that when you went to speak with someone that was in mourning, you didn't say anything till they said something. So after 7 days and 7 nights, Job is going to start off this series of speeches in Job 3. Verse 1 says, "After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. He said," so this begins this dialogue between Job and his friends. Sometimes the speaker will answer something the previous speaker said, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes these speeches are more emotional than logical. This chapter begins the battle in Job's mind and soul. He doesn't want to lose more than he has lost. This is all about how he will choose to think about his suffering, how he will choose to think about God in all this. After all the catastrophe, all the personal affliction, all the demonstration of compassion from his friends, now Job will speak. When Job talks, he often speaks directly to God. His friends will speak about God a lot, but they never talk to God. Now remember, Satan was sure he could push Job to curse God, but he doesn't come close. Instead, Job curses his birth. Notice in all these speeches, Job never directly mentions the loss of his possessions and family. Now for us, wouldn't that be the thing that would be on our mind? But he doesn't say anything about it. So Job's thinking was somewhat common among the ancients. The historian Herodotus described that there were some ancient people who mourned any new birth because of all that suffering that new life was going to go through. And they rejoiced in death as a final release from that suffering. We look at our life as a gift from God, and our death as a time where we will get to spend eternity with him. Verses 3 through 10 say, "May the day of my birth perish, and that night that said, a boy is conceived. That day may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May no light shine on it. May gloom and utter darkness claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm it. That night, may thick darkness seize it. May it not be included among the days of the year, nor be uttered in any of the months. May that night be barren. May no shout of joy be heard in it. May those who curse days curse that day. Those who are ready to rouse Leviathan, may its morning stars become dark. May it wait for daylight in vain, and not see the first rays of dawn. For it did not shut the doors of the womb on me to hide trouble from my eyes." So this is all about he wishes he was never born. He curses the day he was born. He even goes farther back and he curses the night he was conceived. He says it just would have been better if that never happened. There is a series of 15 Josephs, I'm not sure how to say it. It's a grammatical term. It meaning like a phrase. And they represent curse requests. They all relate to the day of his conception and birth. There's so many words that represent darkness in these verses. Blackness, a cloud, gloom, utter darkness, no light, barrenness, morning stars becoming dark, just all these darkness. The ancients, they feared the night, and they often personified it. So Job also summons the ancient soothsayers to curse his birth. Now, that doesn't mean that Job endorsed the practices of ancient sorcerers. He is just trying to make sure everyone's covered in this. In verse 4, when it talks about God, the word used for God here is Eloah. That is the singular version of Elohim. Every time we see Elohim, that's plural, pointing to the Trinity. Here it's singular. So Leviathan. First mention of this strange creature. It won't be the last. In Middle Eastern mythology, a Leviathan was a 7-headed monster. They said eclipses were caused by Leviathans swallowing the moon and the sun. They said there was a custom of sorcerers and enchanters. They claimed to have the power to make a bad day by rousing a dragon from the sea and inciting it to swallow the sun or the moon. So basically, if the sun and moon were swallowed on Job's birthday, that day would be missing and he would not have been born. So a commentator, John Trapp, said, be careful trying to figure out exactly what a Leviathan is. And that seems like good advice. What this phrase actually means is that even as sailors and fishermen would curse the attack of a Leviathan, Job wished his birthday would also have been cursed. So, gist of this is he wished he'd never been born. Verse 11 through 19, why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Why were there knees to receive me and breasts that I might be nursed? For now I would be lying down in peace. I would be asleep and at rest with kings and rulers of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins, with princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden away in the ground like a stillborn child, like an infant who never saw the light of day? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest. Captives also enjoy their ease. They no longer hear the slave drivers shout. The small and the great are there, and the slaves are freed from their owners. So Job continues in his complaint. This time is like, why didn't I die when I was born? If I had to be born, why didn't I just die? And he uses a lot of poetic exaggeration. So he's asking, like, why couldn't I have been stillborn? A lot of people think that would be a sin to wish you had never been born. Or to be so emotional about things and to be distressed. But the Bible never says we have to have a stoic, unfeeling, stiff upper lip attitude about all our problems. God gave us our emotions. He wants us to look at Him when those emotions get the best of us. Now, Job doesn't understand the afterlife. We're going to run into that a lot with the old patriarchs and things. They don't have the benefit of scripture that we have. He believes that when he dies, he'll just sleep. It's called soul sleep. Now, we need to be careful about building doctrine out of statements in Job. For instance, Jehovah's Witnesses use this as one of their verses to say that when we die, our souls cease. And when Jesus returns, he will recreate the souls of the true believers, that our souls go to sleep. And that's not what really happens. It is what Job says, but he didn't have the benefit of scripture. In fact, it's not clear whether he believes in an afterlife at all. That's a sad thing to think. There's no afterlife. In fact, in the New Testament, the Sadducees, the religious political party, they didn't believe in the afterlife. Someone told me an easy way to remember what they believe is because they don't believe in an afterlife, they are sad, you see. Later, God will correct Job on this. He talks about how men achieve great things, but when they die, it's gone. It's the no U-Haul behind a hearse type idea. Job also mentions that the wicked don't suffer turmoil after death. We know that's wrong. Sinners, their troubles never stop. In fact, it gets worse. It is not a party in hell. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine murderers, they left behind a videotape document. And the last segment of the tape shot the morning of the murderers. Harris and Klebold, they're dressed and say they're ready for their little judgment day. Then Klebold looks tense. He says goodbye to his parents. He ends by saying, I didn't like life too much. Just know that I'm going to a better place than here. Not true. It's not better at all. Verses 20 through 26 say, why is light given to those in misery and life to the bitter of soul? To those who long for death that does not come, who searches for it more than hidden treasures, who are filled with gladness and rejoice when they reach the grave. Why is life given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil. Job wonders why God lets those who are in misery just keep living on in misery. It's another way to say that death is better than going through this. But you don't see Job thinking about suicide. He's just pouring out his soul. Through this, Job hasn't lost faith in God. He's still talking to God. He was afraid that God had lost his faith in him, and God hasn't. Job's concern from beginning to end is God, not his wealth, not his health, but his life with God. We never see him whine that God took away his children or his things. He's only worried about his relationship with God. Job asks, why, God, did you hedge me in? Why did you trap me? He didn't realize that God had built a hedge around him to protect him. And Satan is the one that is hedging him in. But why is God allowing this to continue? Well, there's several reasons. The angels are watching and they're learning a lesson about God and about the strength of man. It also teaching Job how to rely on God. Job Through this book, he's becoming a lesson and example for all ages. These are also reasons why God allows trouble to continue in our lives. When you go through trouble, are you a lesson and example in a good way or in a bad way? You are a lesson, but which way? Job reminds us that before this, he knows he didn't live a carefree life. He was concerned that trouble might come, and that's why he sacrificed for his children. This ends the first speech. It shows that even a great man of faith can fall into depression and despair. Tomorrow we will start the first speech of one of his friends. Thank you for joining me.